Is it possible that without drug control, human civilization would end up in a far worse state than the animal kingdom? When it comes to resisting addictive substances, every carbon-based life form is astonishingly vulnerable. Across nature, animals repeatedly sacrifice survival itself for a brief chemical high. Drugs don't simply weaken willpower, they hijack the deepest source code of the nervous system, overriding survival instincts that took hundreds of millions of years to evolve. Today, let's explore just how far the creatures of planet Earth will go in pursuit of intoxication. Take your seemingly harmless pet dog. Scientific studies have shown that dogs are among the animals most frequently poisoned, partly because certain receptors in their brains are even more responsive than ours. In Australia, however, many dogs actively seek out poisonous cane toads, licking the toxic glands behind their heads. Those glands release powerful psychoactive compounds with effects similar to certain hallucinogens. A single lick can leave a dog foaming at the mouth, suffering heart arrhythmias and teetering on the edge of death. Yet if it survives, the overwhelming surge of neurological reward often outweighs the memory of pain. And many dogs will return the very next day to search for the same toad again. That is the terrifying nature of addiction. It doesn't simply cost money, it physically rewires the brain. Out in the American West, cattle often ignore healthy grass to seek out poisonous locowweed, a plant containing toxic alkaloids that gradually destroy brain cells and leave irreversible neurological damage. Once addicted, cows develop exaggerated reflexes, lose coordination, and suffer permanent cognitive impairment. Even more disturbing, they will willingly starve to death rather than stop searching for the plant, costing ranchers millions of dollars every year. Pigs are no different, blessed with an extraordinary sense of smell capable of detecting truffles buried deep underground. They often use that same gift to locate grain infected with ergot fungus. The fungus produces compounds closely related to LSD, causing hallucinations, tremors, and severe blood vessel constriction that can literally cause their legs to rot away. Historically, this condition became known as St. Anthony's fire. Yet even while their bodies deteriorate and their limbs blacken, many pigs continue returning to consume the same poison grain, abandoning even the most basic instinct for survival. Addiction doesn't merely destroy individuals, it can collapse entire societies. Ant colonies are among the most efficient civilizations in nature. Yet some parasitic insects exploit them by secreting irresistible chemicals that hijack the ants' reward systems. After tasting these substances, worker ants neglect their duties, abandon the colony, and even sacrifice their own larvae to feed the parasite's offspring. Entire colonies eventually collapse, not because of predators, but because addiction has destroyed the social structure from within. Primates behave no differently. In Madagascar, lemurs deliberately capture giant millipedes, biting and squeezing them until they release toxic defensive chemicals. The lemurs then rub the secretions all over their fur and even into their mouths before collapsing into a trance-like state, drooling and staring blankly into space for minutes at a time. Competition over these intoxicating millipedes can become so intense that peaceful animals suddenly fight one another for the chance to experience the chemical rush. Bears, usually among nature's most cautious predators, are not immune either. Every autumn, many deliberately seek out fermented berries, consuming enough alcohol to lose their balance and fall asleep in dangerously exposed locations. Himalayan bears risk deadly bee attacks to steal toxic honey containing naturally occurring neurotoxins, while Siberian bears have been observed consuming poisonous mushrooms that trigger severe hallucinations, leaving them rolling across the ground in complete disorientation. Under the influence, even their legendary survival instincts disappear. Mountain goats have become nature's reckless chemical testers. Thanks to their incredible climbing abilities, they reach plants that few other animals can access. They happily consume locowweed alongside cattle and repeatedly chew wild tobacco, containing nicotine concentrations far higher than commercial tobacco, effectively dosing themselves with powerful addictive chemicals. According to legend, coffee itself was discovered after herders noticed their goats becoming wildly energetic after eating certain red berries. Even insects prove just as susceptible. Some tropical butterflies and moths deliberately seek out fermented fruit, tree sap, and even animal waste to consume naturally occurring alcohols. They become so intoxicated that predators can approach within inches before the insects even attempt to escape. Monarch butterflies deliberately feed on plants containing toxic alkaloids, tolerating poison because it offers reproductive advantages. At the very bottom of the food chain, slugs and snails reveal perhaps the saddest example of all. Over millions of years, they evolved to associate the smell of ethanol with calorie-rich food. Gardeners eventually discovered that simply placing a shallow dish of beer in the garden was enough to lure slugs from every direction. They crawled toward it like zombies, many drowning inside, while survivors lose the muscle coordination needed to crawl away. Even after watching others die, more continue entering the trap, unable to resist the chemical attraction. Looking across the animal kingdom, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. These creatures spent hundreds of millions of years evolving extraordinary defenses. Yet addictive substances can disable the very instinct that keeps them alive. Drugs are not a source of happiness. They are malicious code that hijacks the biological operating system itself, rewriting the fundamental logic of survival. That is why International Day Against Drug Abuse exists. Animals have no rehabilitation centers. Nature simply removes those that cannot resist. In a world filled with temptation, the greatest strength is not intelligence or power, it is the ability to control your own desires. Throughout evolutionary history, animals that repeatedly chose intoxicating plants over survival were ultimately eliminated by natural selection. In many ways, drugs function as one of nature's harshest filters. Humanity's fight against addiction is therefore more than a public health campaign, it is an act of collective self-preservation. We refuse to let dopamine become our master. We refuse to be forced out of the game by a flaw hidden deep within our own biology. So what do you think? Will humanity ever truly overcome the threat of drugs?